This is CNN Student News. We've got 10 minutes of current events lined up, 2 stories on water, 2 on land, 0 commercials. First up, the U.S. Navy. Its former slogan, a global force for good. But how large should that force be? That question is being addressed by politicians, military experts, observers, and analysts, but the answer is harder to find. On one hand, the U.S. Navy currently has 10 aircraft carriers, more than the rest of the world combined, and technology that some observers say puts it well ahead of any other country's Navy. On the other hand, the military branch itself says changes are coming and that it needs 30 more ships to maintain its presence around the world. Many defense experts agree, but a shrinking U.S. military budget could keep the Navy stretched thin.
The U.S. Navy is the world's largest. American warships travel the globe, confronting drug traffickers and pirates, providing post-disaster humanitarian aid, and prepping for possible military conflicts. But in terms of fleet size, today's Navy is the smallest it's been since World War I. Of course, the differences between the technology back then and today's make this comparison questionable. Currently, the U.S. Navy has 273 ships, including 10 aircraft carriers and 30 amphibious ships. China's Navy, now with about 250 warships, is expanding, the Pentagon says. And Russia, with about 270 warships, is modernizing with a new class of cruise missile subs. A Navy strategy report released in March recommended the U.S. fleet be beefed up to more than 300 vessels. But some presidential candidates wonder if that'll be enough. By 2020, the Navy says about 60% of its ships and aircraft will be based in the Indo-Asia-Pacific region, including new weapons systems like the F-35 fighter jet and the Zumwalt-class destroyer. The Pentagon also wants more ships closer to potential hotspots like the Middle East. Maintaining a fleet with well-rested and properly trained sailors requires a constantly shifting, highly choreographed strategic dance with national security hanging in the balance. A rotation like that costs big money. Over the past 3 years, Congress has given the Navy $25 billion less than the White House requested, which the Navy says has slowed modernization. Some experts at Washington think tanks say the Navy is already large enough to do its job. Others question the value of expensive aircraft carriers and wonder if that money could be spent better elsewhere, like on so-called unmanned combat air vehicles, aka drones. Tom Patterson, CNN.
Time for the shout-out. Name the longest reigning monarch in British history. Here we go. Is it A, King Henry VIII, B, King George III, C, Queen Victoria, or D, Queen Elizabeth II? You've got 3 seconds. Go. It was only yesterday that Queen Elizabeth II became Britain's longest reigning monarch. That's your answer, and that's your shout-out.
So as of Wednesday, Queen Elizabeth II had reigned exactly 1 day longer than the previous record holder. That was her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. The current monarch has been ruling for 23,227 days and counting. That is 63 years and 216 days for those of you without calculators. The Queen's position is mostly ceremonial. She can't vote, and she doesn't have much lawmaking power. That's held by the British Parliament. But she can be consulted on legal matters, and fun fact, by law, she can drive a car as fast as she wants to. British Prime Minister David Cameron said Queen Elizabeth's reign has been the golden thread running through 3 post-war generations. This should give you a sense of how historic that reign is.
The tragic news reached Princess Elizabeth and her husband while in Kenya.
It was the first day of a lifetime of service. King George had died, and the 25-year-old Queen set aside her grief and prepared for duty. For a nation weakened by World War II, Elizabeth II brought hopes of renewal. Winston Churchill called it the new Elizabethan age.
I think that this famous phrase was supposed to signify Britain having helped to win the war, reviving and becoming a country rather akin to its 16th century predecessor, the famous Elizabeth I.
The 1950s, an age of austerity. Many food items were still rationed, and weakness in Britain's finances was having a severe impact on Britain's already diminished empire.
Much of the empire went before she actually ascended the throne. There is the question, undoubtedly, of a decline in military power.
Anti-British feeling was heating up in the Middle East. In 1952, deadly protests erupted in Egypt over Britain's control of the Suez Canal. And there was an even greater strain on British morale and finances.
With speed and honor, I shall go to Korea.
In 1952, as Dwight Eisenhower was elected US President, 100,000 British troops were fighting alongside their US allies in Korea. It was a war now as old as the Queen's reign itself. June 1953. As the coronation got underway, news reached England that Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay had conquered Mount Everest, one of the great feats of the 20th century. For Elizabeth, staying the course came naturally. She had made a promise between God, Queen, and country.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Another day, another awesome roll call. First time we've announced these states this year. Oklahoma is up first. We're headed to Okemah. It's where we found Okemah Middle School and the Panthers. In Spring Mills, Pennsylvania, you got to watch out for the Rams. They're watching from Penns Valley High School. And in southeastern Sweden, we welcome all of our viewers in Uppsala. Hello to everyone at the historic Katedralskolan. The director of the International Shark Attack File. Yes, that is an actual job. He says 2015 is on track to be an average year for shark attacks. Earlier this summer, it didn't look that way. There were 8 incidents off the North Carolina coast in around 6 weeks. 2 teenagers lost limbs in separate attacks there. Worldwide, there have been more than 60 unprovoked attacks overall, 6 of which were deadly. In 2014, researchers recorded 72 unprovoked attacks. Unprovoked describes an accidental attack where sharks might confuse people with their normal food. A provoked attack would be when people are fishing or trying to catch a shark. Fewer Americans go to the beach after Labor Day, so attacks become less likely later in the year. It's what developers describe as a new kind of electric vehicle, sort of a cross between a skateboard and a unicycle, except you don't push or pedal it. One wheel has an electric motor that moves it along. Because it has just one big wheel, its makers say it can go off-road in a way some skateboards can't. But it also has one potentially big limitation. A skateboard costs less than $100. One wheel costs $1,500, which some would say is one wheelie expensive board. There'd be a lot riding on the purchase. Could be tough for sellers to pedal it, but you'd certainly get a charge out of it. It'd be an interesting mode or transportation, and if some don't like it, let the haters skate. That's all for CNN Student News. Hope to see you tomorrow.